for the remainder of the show, my intention is to sort of do a detailed reading of the bylaws and to talk about some of the pieces that were adopted and some of the decisions that were made about that. So that first of all, is kind of as a transparency thing to say, okay, well, this is what's been approved. These are the documents that will be governing the organization. But I think there's also some really interesting and innovative things that were sort of baked into them that we got from Blackstar that really are, that for some of the governance problems that I've seen in the cooperative world, and it's one of those things where, again, if you've been following the show, you know all about the kind of democratic, the sort of very shallow democracy that Eric and I encountered at, for instance, Vermont Federal Credit Union, where it's more or less has been functioning for decades as a rubber stamp that really, has minimal sort of, there's no broad-based member involvement in governance there. And so this is something that really, I think, is going to be exciting to see as we pioneer these mechanisms, and also have adopted certain pieces from other co-ops that really are about empowering members, respecting and valuing the democratic process and the democratic identity of the cooperative model. So we're going to pull up the text actually on the screen, so you'll be able to see. It's just in a Google Doc. And I'll kind of run through it. So to start with, actually the first debate we had in our conversation was quite silly in that very first line, where it talks about the name of the co-op. So Full Barrel Cooperative Limited. Turns out under Vermont law, co-op, you literally have to, if you're incorporating a co-op, it has to be the name of the co-op, comma, company, corporation, incorporated, or limited, which was just very odd. So we had kind of a sort of tongue-in-cheek conversation about that, but ultimately decided limited would be kind of the most kind of silly sounding one. So we, of course, decided to go with that one. So officially the name, when we incorporate, will be Full Barrel Cooperative Limited, and doing business as Full Barrel Cooperative Brewery and Tap Room. And the same as Blackstar, below this, we sort of took the International Cooperative Alliance's definition of a co-op to just make it clear to say, all right, this is who we are. We are a co-op. We believe ourselves to be part of the larger cooperative movement that is, claims more than 1 billion members around the world, and so we have in the very beginning of our bylaws, the 7 cooperative principles that are sort of considered to be universal amongst the cooperative movement, that are the basics. So you can see this under values. So, the voluntary and open membership. Principle 2, democratic member control. Principle 3, member economic participation. Principle 4, autonomy and independence. Education, training and information. So really sort of being part of that, improving the lives of members, not simply economically, but also in terms of their skills and their understanding of the world. Cooperation among cooperatives, which has been already a really important one for this project, in that we've had City Market offer us the opportunity to table at some of their events. That's allowed us to recruit. The VSECU, which is a credit union, has been really sort of helpful in terms of being sponsoring some of our events and being flexible about allowing us to open a checking account before we're incorporated as an unincorporated association, and things like that, where it's where they recognize the value of us being a cooperative and being fellow cooperatives, and have seen, and so really sort of making sure that those relationships exist. And then finally, concern for community. So looking, not simply being about the narrow profitability bottom line, but also really sort of being aware of the bigger things going on in the community, and and understanding our organization have an active role in that. And then there's these additional principles, some of which came from Blackstar directly, and others of which were kind of added as part of, over the summer, we had a working group looking at this. And then there will probably be additional ones added as a result of the kind of vision, mission, and values process we went through yesterday. But the ones we have at the moment are participatory self-management, which is really sort of a deeper affirmation of the democratic member control principle, saying that we really sort of kind of doubling down on that, saying really that participation is of members of kind of employees is a really vital and important thing that we need to sort of cultivate and foster. Living wage is another interesting one. This actually is this is partially derived from Black Star, where they have a practice where they have no tipping, but instead they guarantee all of their employees a livable wage, which sort of changes the dynamics. And there were several people who had worked in food service who had talked about some of the real issues that come with tipping, and sort of how it's often can be sort of have this misogynistic and racist components to it in terms of how much people receive, and really so there's pretty broad-based support for the living wage piece. The only kind of sort of concern was in moments that where it might be sort of financially infeasible, but it starts with the qualification that when financially able. So we aren't painting ourselves into a corner, but we're setting that as something that is a value and of importance to us. Sustainability, so thinking about the environment and that we live in. Privacy, this is one that was added through the conversation of the working group, but really making sure that the information that members give us as part of being members really is guarded and fostered. So it's really partially a trust thing, because members are going to give a lot of information. We'll know a lot about members. Every time a member comes in and buys something and swipes their card, that allows us to keep track of how much they've spent, so that we can give the profits of the co-op back to them. That gives us an incredibly detailed data set of what people's consumer preferences are, their behavior, like all this sort of stuff. So we really wanted to sort of make sure from the get-go that respecting and valuing member privacy would be a core value. And then finally, this responsible consumption of alcohol. And we had an interesting conversation about this at the retreat too. But really kind of trying to take proactive steps to, encourage people not to drink and drive, and see kind of, encourage an approach to drinking that is appreciative and community-oriented, and that doesn't lend itself to abuse. Because, the sort of thing where if your business model is essentially profiting off of people's addictions, that's morally deeply problematic. Versus if this is something where we're trying to build community, and this sort of community, this community-based enterprise, we want to sort of be in a caring and responsible orientation towards our members and not cause harm. So really sort of having a commitment to this responsible consumption of alcohol is one of our core values. Is another piece that also Black Star has, and we felt was valuable. So now getting into sort of what membership, sort of what it means to be a member, what the details of being a member are. So basically we made it so that membership in the co-op is open to natural persons and organizations that are either nonprofits or co-ops. So for-profit businesses won't be able to join, but partially because it's the sort of thing where we wouldn't necessarily want competitors or other sort of organizations that might ultimately have ulterior motives in one way or the other coming in. But of course, Principle 6, we want to be able to have relationships with cooperatives, and we would also nonprofits as well that share our values. The cost of membership is sort of set by the board, but we as a group agreed at the meeting, so it's $100 is the initial equity. In the similar way where city markets, the cost of a share at city market is $200, and that gives you a full ownership stake in the co-op. For us, the cost has been set at $100, but it's ultimately up to the discretion of the board to set that. And there's also a limit on the amount. If people wanted to invest more to help the co-op out, they can. But we've set a limit on, so no more than 10% of the capital invested in the co-op can be owned by any one member to just make sure that all of our eggs aren't in one basket. So pretty much for initiation, for someone to begin their membership, all they need to do is pay for their share and fill out the necessary paperwork, and you're a member. And then it goes into sort of, as I talked about before, the types of members, individual members and business members. If two people live in the same household with the same mailing address, if the board decides to have a joining fee on top of the equity payment, then that fee is waived for the second person joining because it's all going to one address. So that was kind of just a minor logistical piece. And then a few items about if someone leaves and doesn't actually cancel their account, just how we deal with that sort of situation. And let's see, if we keep rolling down, we can kind of see that. And so if someone leaves, they can resign at any time. They can be, if you keep going down, and then certain sort of things. If a member, the grounds for the expulsion of a member and the process. So there's regular member assemblies several times a year. So if someone is sort of put forward for expulsion, they're guaranteed the ability to defend themselves at the next member assembly and sort of make the case for why they shouldn't be. This is something Blackstar has, although when the last time I talked to them, they'd never actually used this clause, but it's still sort of, I guess, important to have. So then this kind of return on capital investment piece, members who withdraw from the co-op, we refunded the full value, once new membership capital is acquired. So it's the sort of thing where if you leave, you get your $100 back. But at the same time, the co-op can do that on its discretion as long as it doesn't put the co-op in financial jeopardy. So the co-op could delay the payment of that unless it's over the expulsion of a member, in which that should be returned immediately. And then if we keep going, so the transferability thing, just you can't sell your membership to someone else. And then the members' assembly. So this is kind of an interesting thing that gives members substantially more power in this co-op than in most co-ops in Vermont. So the members' assembly, anyone who's a member is a member of the members' assembly. It sort of goes without saying, it would seem like. But so a couple of the key powers is the members have the power to both elect and remove directors from their posts. So if the members are really dissatisfied with the performance of a director, they can actually sort of remove that person at the members' assembly. They can pass advisory resolutions for consideration by the board and approve kind of ends policies, which sort of set the values and sort of mission of the co-op. So if the board wants to sort of put forward a new ends policy, it needs to be approved by the members' assembly. So it doesn't have, the power to set policy per se, but it can pass an advisory resolution, and if, the board of directors is, clearly going against the will of the membership, then it would have the power to remove directors in response. So it kind of sort of balances the power there a bit more than is in most co-ops, where a lot of the power more power lies directly in the board. And then the meeting section, this gets particularly interesting because most consumer co-ops have a single meeting of members a year, whereas our sort of these Blackstar based bylaws for Full Barrel specifically says that the members' assembly shall meet at least 3 times per calendar year, and so that really, I think, changes the dynamics of governance quite a bit, because rather than having to wait a full year to deal with something, it's the sort of thing where it's at most a few months before you can bring forward a resolution, or if there's a director problem, remove a director, or do what needs to be done in that way. And so there was some conversation about people. There was 1 or 2 people who were worried that might be too often. But I think this is one of the advantages of having it be sort of as a brew pub co-op, is that the meeting and it can be an excuse to kind of have these member gatherings where it's not just a meeting but also kind of a party. That at Blackstar, in order to make quorum or to encourage the meetings to make quorum, the first 50 people to come to the meeting, members to come to the meeting, get a free pint of beer. Now, I don't believe that that particular strategy is legal under Vermont law because you can't give away beer. But nonetheless, that sort of thing where it would be like maybe we have a homebrew competition before each one. So, members, or after each one. So members get to try each other's homebrew and vote on which one they like best and decide, okay, well, the one that's the best, we'll brew that recipe for until the next members assembly, that sort of thing. So it's really kind of, I think, this sort of co-op is the most ripe to be able to have members who are involved enough to come to more than one meeting a year. And so they have must conduct at least 3 regularly scheduled business meetings, as I mentioned, with notice. And also we set the bar fairly low for if there's a special meeting to consider a particular issue, that special meeting be callable pretty easily. So it's either majority vote of the board of directors, a petition of at least 10% or 25 active members. So no more than 25 members is needed, and the membership needs 7 days notice. So if there's like a big issue that the members need to deal with immediate or as soon as possible, there's that option. And the quorum being that sort of a members' assembly needs to have a certain number of members there, and sort of half the director or over half the directors, because there's 9 directors, and a number of employees present as possible, and also allowing for members to vote by mail or electronic means to make sure that quorum is made if necessary. So voting, simple majority. There was some discussion at the retreat about kind of putting a standard in for the use of kind of consensus first, with voting as the fallback. It was ultimately decided that was that needed sort of more work before really there could be a proposal for changing that would be really thought through. But that's kind of going to be put in hopefully the kind of ballpark of the board of directors when they're elected to really think about that and develop a proposal. And so meeting votes. Here's another really interesting piece that I had actually never seen this in bylaws before seeing the Black Star ones. But it's a really interesting way of sort of protecting minority, first of all, the right of the minority, but also the kind of, if a decision is made that kind of represents the people who are in the room, but doesn't feel like it represents the membership as a whole, it gives basically the ability of a minority to force a more general referendum in which all members can participate. So basically, if a third of the present meeting, if we scroll down a little bit more, a third of the present meeting calls for basically says, hey, this is too much. Or what you're trying to do is too much. This doesn't reflect the best interest. We want all members to be able to vote on it. They can call a referendum. And referendums can also be called by a group of 25 members or the board of directors. And so you can see there's these certain requirements for how many members have to vote, but that gives an additional piece of power to the group that to the members that really sort of allows for more ensuring participation, ensuring that a small kind of clique can't really gain full control without the consent of broad-based support from the membership. So then now we're getting into the board stuff. So the board will consist of 9 directors. Up to 3 of those directors may be employees of the co-op. So this is one of the interesting kind of tensions as we're really trying to balance. There's strong protections of employee kind of worker rights in these bylaws, and there's a workers' assembly. But balancing the interests of the kind of employees with the interests of the consumer members. So there's actually, we'll get to this piece a little bit later, but there's kind of, instead of a general manager, there's a role called the board staff liaison. And that person has to be both approved by a vote of the employees and also by a vote of the board of directors. So their role really is to balance the interests of those 2 groups. And so that's why, so there can be employees who are on the board of directors, but the employees, can be no more than a third of the board of directors can be part of that, because the board needs to be primarily representing the interests of the consumer members, and so if the board was also stacked with employees, then it would really function as something that represents the interests primarily of the employees. So that I felt like was a very sort of interesting and good balance to have hit. And so the board kind of its general, the responsibility is setting overarching organizational policy, overseeing the workers' assembly, issuing investor shares, leading the meetings of the members' assembly, ensuring that actions taken by the co-op are both lawful and consistent with the bylaws. So pretty standard stuff for a board. And the eligibility for the board members are also pretty basic. You need to be a member in good standing, and be willing to submit to a background check with the Vermont Department of Liquor Control, which is a requirement for the board of any organization that serves or manufactures alcohol. So that's kind of a legal requirement. And so for nominations, this was actually another piece that came from the Washington Electric Co-op. So they have a very interesting backstory. Their board, there's a very contentious period in their history where there's a group that was kind of pushing for divestment from nuclear power, and there was kind of an old guard who supported sort of continued relationships with Seabrook nuclear power plant. And so there's this back and forth. And as a result of all of that tension over a number of years, the organization really was able to do this, was able to, or kind of thought about the democratic process, thought about how to really preserve access to it, how to make it so it's the sort of thing where the people who are currently in power can't just use their position to throw up barriers to members, asserting their values within the governance of the organization. And one of the ways that they changed that was a lot of co-ops have nominating committees, and that nominating committee is selected by the board. And has the power to include or not include people on the ballot. And again, in the sort of Vermont Federal Credit Union situation, that nominating committee essentially, put forward some ballots where they rejected applicants who were wanting to challenge the status quo and refused to include them on the ballot. And so that's kind of a way of So in a lot of the credit union bylaws, the way around that then is to gain ballot access by petition, but oftentimes that barrier is set extremely high. So in an organization like Vermont Federal, it was when we were sort of trying to run, it was somewhere you needed to collect realistically between 350 and 400 member signatures to get on the ballot. And especially in the age of now, people who use ATMs or just basically do all their banking online, the question of how are you going to find 350, 400 members of the credit union if most people don't even go into the branches and the credit union won't give you a membership list is actually a really big and problematic one for a lot of credit unions. And I think it's one of the big questions of governance that needs to be addressed. So what Washington Electric Co-op decided was they were going to change and not have a committee or not have a nominating committee, but to have what they call a committee on candidates. And so for Full Barrel, that we're basically copying that idea and saying, all right, so the role of this committee is to encourage members who are interested to submit information, and rather than vetting and saying you can run, you can be on the ballot, or you can't be on the ballot, rather its role is to encourage people to run, make sure that they qualify to run. So okay, are you a member in good standing? Like, can you be certified by the Vermont Department of Liquor Control? Like, or is there some criminal charge in your past that will bar you from doing that? So making sure that all those administrative ducks are in a row. But otherwise, just saying, okay, we'll make sure to include you on the ballot. And that really means then that, in terms of, again, both those values that I discussed earlier, both the member democratic control and the sort of participatory, governance, that ensures that the ultimate decision who gets who is representing the interests of the members cannot be taken over by a small group of people who are already in power, but is something that is decided by all of the members who choose to vote. And that is really kind of how a co-op can really embrace democracy and sort of honor those principles. So we have that that sort of committee on candidates piece, which is really important. Then we also have some term limits, which is another piece, so that if we don't again run into a Vermont federal situation where you have people who have been on the board 20 or 30 years, just kind of reproducing their own power, but instead sort of we have something where we kind of balance the interests of the co-op really to have people who spend a few years, really get to know and understand what the co-op is about and doing and thinking in a long-term way, but also ensuring that there's sort of a rotation of members who are interested in being in that role to sort of give their service to the co-op. And that is so basically there'll be 9 directors, and there will be they'll serve 3-year terms, and they may serve up to 2 3-year terms or 8 total years in a row, and then there has to be a gap of at least one period between them, or between terms. So they would have to wait 2 years before running again, and so that really sort of means that there will be sort of a certain amount of churn as people kind of go in and go out, and it's not something that people will kind of start, incumbents especially will kind of view as their just kind of right indefinitely, but as a period of service that you give to the co-op, and then it's expected that others get involved. And that's another way of also building this kind of broad-based member participation. So you'll have lots of people who have been on the board of directors, who are part of the membership, and who could run again and say I have equal experience as you if you're not doing a good job, or if there's some profound disagreement. And it really is another way of ensuring healthy democracy. So then, looking at the elections, the elections will be done by kind of ballot in a way over a period of time, so that so for over 30 days, all members have a chance to participate. This is yet another one of those lessons from Vermont Federal where we pushed for a similar system there as a way of saying, okay, well, if you're going to claim that the board represents all the members, let's let all the members vote. And of course, again, you're going up against an entrenched oligarchy. They're not going to like that idea of having to be accountable to everybody. But we're making sure it's built in. And also, this is kind of a little Easter egg that we decided to include into the bylaws as part of the discussion. So what if there's a tie? Odds are there probably won't be many ties, but if there is, the decision will be made by rock, paper, scissors, best 2 out of 3 between the candidates. So we kind of felt that would be kind of a good-natured and goodwill way of resolving that sort of situation. That's a little bit playful, kind of reflects the sort of value and hopefully the vibe of our organization, and also I think means that whoever can walk away sort of reflecting that these sorts of roles are something that again rotate, and it's not something where if one person gets in, the expectation is they'll be in forever, like say in the U.S. Congress, and if you don't get your shot now, it's just a huge deal versus saying, all right, well we'll rock, paper, scissors, shoot, and whoever wins that will become the board member. So removal, that's another, I think, really important one. So, and a key thing here is the director may be removed with or without cause. So if a director is staying within their rights, or within sort of their rights, but they're sort of moving maybe the co-op in a direction that fundamentally is kind of differs from what the vast majority of the rank and file membership feel is right, that director may be removed. So the removal requires a 2/3 vote of the board or a majority vote of the members' assembly. We had some discussion about this because it was like, well, why only a majority vote of the members' assembly? But that's again where that 1/3 minority clause comes in. So if it's maybe 55% of members vote yes, remove the director, and 45% vote no, then those 45% can say, wait a minute, hold on, this is a big decision, removing a board member. We vote to move this to a full referendum. And then it makes sense. So there's a built-in safety mechanism that makes a majority vote better than another, or sort of more appropriate than it would be if that was the sole deciding factor without any recourse, like that 1/3 minority clause. So for vacancies, the board, this is a pretty standard one. Someone resigns, someone passes away, the board can appoint someone to that position until the next election cycle, at which point that position would be up for election. Officers, the board chooses officers. Again, this is kind of standard boilerplate procedure, kind of required by law. Board meeting, the board will meet on a monthly basis, 11 months out of the year, so have the flexibility to have 1 month not meeting, and can also call special meetings. Have to notice the meetings to the membership substantially in advance. So if any members want to attend, they may. The quorum is 2/3 of directors, and directors can join. Quorum can be met by things including sort of electronic participation, so joining by video call, things like that. Conflict of interest, members of the board should recuse themselves if there's something being discussed that they have an interest in. And the board can. This is another interesting thing. So if the board has a meeting and they don't make quorum, they can still have a meeting. But the decisions that are made have to be ratified and at a meeting with a full quorum, or they can use electronic voting and say, okay, well, we only have 4 people at this meeting. These 4 people, there's several items on the agenda that we need to make decisions about, so we'll vote on that, and then we'll send out an email to all of the other members of the board, and those members of the board may vote. We'll have a 48-hour period to respond, and if a sufficient number respond, then that counts as quorum, and that decision can be made, or it can be decided upon and confirmed one way or the other. And then this closed meetings issue is another interesting one. So both for the electronic votes and for this, specifically, all meetings of the board shall be open to members. Though the board has the discretion to say, all right, this is a personnel issue, or this is a we're talking about a real estate deal, and these are details that we can't have public outside the board in order because because of the specific things involved. So the board may go into executive session. So then compensation. So we've kind of left it to sort of co-op policy to decide whether the board should be volunteer or whether they should receive some compensation. But we've made kind of explicitly limited the compensation that board members may be compensated no more than the lowest paid employee of the co-op. So it's the sort of thing where maybe it makes sense in order to encourage, if we want to have, depending on the amount of work it is, to encourage people to take on the role. Maybe it makes sense to give them a small stipend for each meeting attended, for gas or something like that. But it's not the sort of thing where we've made sure that it's not the sort of thing where someone could expect to make a living as a board member or something like that. And then voting, again, just sort of defining that unless otherwise specified as simple majority. And then the Workers' Assembly. This is another interesting piece because this is derived from Black Star, an attempt to, even though it's legally a consumer co-op, to really sort of try to make it what's called something of a hybrid co-op, or at least try to integrate some pieces of that into it that really give the employees more power than they would have just under the basic employment law. And so basically all members of all co-op members who are also employees are members of what's called the Workers' Assembly. And the Workers' Assembly is charged with implementing policies and sort of communicates through the board with the individual mentioned earlier, who's the board staff liaison. And the Workers' Assembly, there's a sort of volunteers section, but the Workers' Assembly basically elects one individual to sort of be in this board staff liaison position. That person's role is to chair the workers' assembly meetings and to, go to the board meetings, report into the board meetings as to sort of what's going on operationally, suggest things that the board needs to address, that sort of thing. And so this workers' assembly concept is one that's been going at Blackstar for a number of years, and is, I think, a fairly robust model. And it's something that kind of allows for employee voices to be heard. And so the voting and the membership, there's consistent meetings. If we can scroll down just a little bit. So we've got the board staff liaison, volunteers, potentially if the members, the workers' assembly can make use of volunteers, but they need to sort of create the sort of volunteer policy. And the sort of person who is the board staff liaison, as I mentioned before, has to also be approved by the board as well as the employees. And that role is elected once a year. It's a kind of way of making sure that the person is accountable. And furthermore, sort of if the employees feel like that person is really sort of doing something that's out of line, they can vote by a 2/3 majority to recall that person and elect another person to that position. So if we want to keep going down, so the meetings of the workers' assembly once a month, and so that's democratic and allows really hopefully employees to really have a meaningful input into the workplace environment. And then the financial section here is there's just a few requirements that some of these were required by Vermont law, so can pay no more than 6% on shares in the co-op. A lot of co-ops like City Market don't pay any interest, and it's all the returns of the members are on patronage. And my guess is will probably be similar, but that's kind of a baseline. The reserve fund, just making sure that there's adequate kind of pad of money kind of socked away to really cover any sort of issues. And then patronage fund, very similar to City Market. Once a year, members will be returned, prorated on how much they spent at the co-op, the profits of the co-op minus setting aside for reserves and such things. And then finally, there's a few other pieces in here. Indemnification, basically, that's a lot of legalese, but essentially saying that the co-op will carry insurance to cover its employees and board members and such not. If one piece of these bylaws is found to be not enforceable, everything else is enforceable. So adoption and amendment kind of reiterates how the bylaws are amended, and also sort of gives the process for the first board meeting, or for the first meeting of the members once we incorporate to adopt these. So 2/3 majority of vote at the members present, and then it'll be adopted and becomes the official bylaws of the organization. And the final piece here is sunset, which is another kind of little. I think there might be one more after this, but I think this one is especially interesting because what it says is that the bylaws are not a forever document, but instead every 5 years they will come up. They have to be reapproved by the membership, and now the membership can modify them in the meantime at the members' assembly, at least three times a year or more. There's no limitation on maybe having 4 or 5 times a year if it seems to make sense. So there's a lot of opportunities to amend the bylaws anyway, but this allows for really kind of an intentional every 5 years. Let's revisit it. Let's form a committee. If anyone has input onto things that might be improved through changes, let's have like a really sort of robust discussion every 5 years to make sure that this document is really serving the members as best as possible. And then just saying that the final thing, this bylaws provision control, is saying that the value state at the beginning do not override the provisions in the main body of the document that specifically set kind of expectations. So we basically did a read through similar to what we just did at the retreat, and there were some pieces that were added and additional content that was really it was good to process in that sort of detailed way. And hopefully, kind of going through this with you has been helpful. And I think that these bylaws, hopefully, are based on some really forward-thinking co-ops, and will hopefully themselves contribute to sort of the thinking on, co-op governance, and really ensure a robust and truly, authentically democratic organization for many years to come. But in any case, they're going to be the Full Barrel Co-op will be submitting its application for incorporation as a consumer co-op this coming week, and so there's going to be a bunch of news and developments coming out, and then the 21st of February will hopefully be the big kind of launch meeting where the board election and things will happen. So if you want to learn more about the project in the meantime, you can check out their website, which is fullbarrel.coop, or check out Full Barrel on Cooperative on Facebook, and there's and that's a great way to also get involved as a volunteer. And it's all volunteer-driven project right now. So we have a bunch of people. I think we've got a volunteer list of about 100 folks who have all huge diversity of different skills. Whether you're interested in brewing, whether you're interested in helping design websites, graphic design, this sort of governance stuff. It's all over the map. So, but it's a really good, fun group of people, and there's generally drinking beer is involved as kind of an inherent part of the project. So it's been a really fun project to be part of, and it's really exciting to see it moving forward like this. So in any case, we're just about out of time, but you've been watching Cooperative Vermont. We aim to do the show every 2 weeks at VCAM Studios in Burlington. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, hopefully we will be having someone from the Plunkett Foundation in Britain joining us by Skype or by phone in the near future to talk about the conversion of local pubs into cooperative pubs that they've been supporting in that country, of which there's been, I believe, over 80 conversions, which is very exciting. But in the meantime, have a wonderful week. I'm Matthew Cropp, and good night.